This has been fun, and I'm glad y'all have enjoyed it because it's been fun, but it's been crazy to put together. Speaking of crazy, one of my crazy friends is here. He's the EP of the show, and as Victor says best, the EP of all EPs. And I get to surprise him with this. That's right. Cole Johnson
Mm.
is here. What's up, my friend? Great to have you.
Well, it's great to be back, and wow, a nice intro. I like that.
I've been playing around a little bit with a secret weapon you gave me.
I
I've been
see.
I've been having a little fun with it. How have you been?
Been good. Been busy as all get out, but good all the same though.
The morning shift, folks. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, I beg that you do. This man does a wonderful job in getting you started each morning. And on Snowman Multimedia and Snowman Multimedia Radio, I decided, you know what? Instead of preceding him, I'm gonna follow the morning shift because it's a perfect time when we do the show each morning. So congratulations on the success of your show and its growth. And I know you've been busy putting the show together each morning, and people don't understand from our standpoint what kind of a grind it is to put a daily morning show together.
Yeah, it's work. If you wanted to do it successfully, it takes commitment. It takes time away, and to do it by yourself is almost impossible. I can definitely say that to anybody. But it's well worth it. I was actually talking to our mutual friend Wise about that, and he said, "He says, yeah, you love it." I was like, "Yeah, I do. I really do.
It is a labor of love.
It's a labor of love." Yeah.
Been been at this with this particular show for 10 years. Season 11
Hmm.
starts on Labor Day, as you well know.
Hmm.
And when it gets to Labor Day, it's about football. Lots
Yeah.
and lots of football.
Oh yeah.
You've been around with me 8 years now,
Hmm.
covering football, different teams. Of course, your staple team is the Houston Texans, and I tell you what,
Right.
man, these Texans are not playing around this year, not at
No,
all.
no. It looks like the mission for them was depth, and I mean everywhere. I mean they recently signed Cam Akers, the former Rams and well, for a cup of coffee, basically Vikings running back, and
Yeah.
like, well, dang, or you got Joe Mixon earlier, and you have Jamie Pierce who wants to actually earn carries. Wow, okay, so you trying to stack up there, and the wide receiver core is stacked. So I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, okay, so I guess the 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 code word is depth. They want to make
It
sure
is.
they want to make sure they have enough weapons to where they won't have to worry about the next man up, or they could actually not have one person actually carry the wagon the whole way. So yeah,
Mhm.
just impressed with the depth that they've been able to acquire over this past off season.
And that has been, as you said, the key word for Houston is depth. Because remember, late in the season, they had to deal with a ton of injuries. CJ Stroud
Mhm.
had a concussion. They
Yep.
lost Nico Collins for a while. They lost Tank Dell for the remainder of the season, and Tank Dell is going to play a huge part
Yeah.
in that high octane offense. And to get him back, and Stephon Diggs now joins the crew.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is just, you said it about my 49ers. I will say it about your Texans. This is just not fair. But
Mm.
Houston is not playing around with the regime they have in place now. And D'Amico Ryans, a former Texan,
Hmm.
leading the
Yep.
charge right now. These Houston
Yep.
Texans are serious, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah, I am too. I think this is in my opinion, I mean, the franchise has been around since 2002. In my opinion, I think this is the best the franchise has ever looked. And I think this is pretty much the most anticipated regular season, from the training camp aspect, I think the organization has had. I could say that, yeah, the 2012 season maybe would have been, but yeah, but by then we sort of figured, okay, well, yeah, it's about time this team actually does something well.
Hmm.
We didn't expect last year to happen, and I'll be the first to admit that. 2023, I did not expect the Houston Texans to win the AFC South. And if anybody were to say they expected it, yeah, they either wearing rose-colored glasses or they were smoking. Nobody expected to win the division, and
And
the
of
yeah,
course, with the Texans winning the division, there comes the challenge from the Indianapolis Colts, who stacked
yeah,
up themselves this offseason. So
hmm
I've been listening to a lot of pundits. I've had some come to me, and they think that it's a two-horse race in the AFC South. And
hmm
I agree. It's Houston and it's Indianapolis. And it'll be a race to the finish line for both of those teams. And my thought is one of those two will win the division, the other will pick up the wild card. So a lot's at stake with both teams, but it's fun to see them compete and put it together.
Well, I mean, look, the two games they played last year. I mean, it was interesting, and both teams won on the other's home
Home field. Yep.
field.
Yep.
And I think with the Colts, last year was a okay. Who is going to be the pieces we're going to have going forward? And I think
Right.
they unfortunately had to go into that slot because of course, they drafted Anthony Richardson. He started for them for a couple of games, and of course, unfortunately, he gets injured in the win
In the
against the
win
Texans
in
in
Houston.
Houston,
Yeah.
and the team was in flux. It was like, okay, well, and then they started down because they got beaten by the Jaguars
Mhm.
at home. So they're like, okay, so we don't really know who we are yet, but let's see. Let's
Mhm.
see who we are because these pieces we have. Okay, I think we could have something. The one thing that I think they definitely understand is, okay, the buck must start and stop with Jonathan Taylor. And if you don't think that as a Colts fan, something's wrong with you. It must
Num
start and stop with him.
Number 28 is a huge part of their offense, and you've seen it, I've seen it, Jody has seen it. It's like
Mhm.
you gotta go. It doesn't matter who's the quarterback, you gotta go through number
Yeah,
28. And
yeah.
when he realized, when he got paid and was
Mhm.
really in tune with the Colts and installed in that offense, he immediately provided his impact. And it's gonna be the same this year with these two
Mhm.
teams. Who are some other teams that you're going to take a look at that would be, quote, interesting to watch?
Let me see. The Jaguars by default, not necessarily because they're in the same division as the Colts and the Texans, but
Mhm.
uh, they really have had a tale of two halves consecutive seasons.
Yeah.
In 2022, they started off slow and then they came out like game busters and stole the division. Last year, they raced out to a decent lead, and then they just faltered at the end. So with me, I want to see with the Jaguars, can they put together a solid season? And if so, that two-team race can turn quickly into three.
Mhm.
Uh, and so they're interesting. Um, Let me see. Partially, I want to see how the Broncos would be now without the thought of trying to force feed this being Russell Wilson's team and having a clash between him and Sean Payton. And
Mhm.
speaking of Russell Wilson, the Steelers. How is this going to be? I know that he has the starting nod right now,
Mhm.
but can he stay the course all 17 games? And they can't last throwing all the time. So can they actually do so and have a balanced offense? And can they protect Russell Wilson? Because let's be honest, that offensive line of the Broncos is and in the last few years, that offensive
It's
line in
porous.
Seattle was horrible.
It's
In
it's
fact,
it's
if
porous.
And if I'm not
And
mistaken, I think the last 4 years he was with the Seahawks, he was the most sacked quarterback. So no,
you and
yeah,
I hung together on this show first for you as a guest, and then you being my partner for 2 years. What have I said about this end of the Seahawks run with Russell Wilson? That offensive line was porous,
hmm
and they leaned on Russell Wilson way too much.
yeah, yeah. They
Way
don't
too
know way
much.
too
After
much.
the loss
Mhm.
against the Patriots in the
Yeah,
Super Bowl is when everything
hmm
started going downstairs. They leaned
yeah,
on Russell Wilson way too much. The Broncos did the same thing with an even
hmm
more porous offensive line. We don't know what the hell the Steelers are putting together because not only do they have Russell Wilson, they've also signed Justin Fields. And
hmm
when that deal came down and everyone notified me of it, and I saw all the notifications, my two words are, for what?
And look, I get that you have a competitive division because to me, the AFC North is the most competitive division
Oh
in the
man, is it ever?
NFL.
Is it ever?
So I know they had to make some sort of splash because, well, they had to keep now they had to keep it with the Browns. Of course, they want to catch the Ravens. Even though they finished ahead of the Bengals, it basically was by default because you had
Right.
Joe Burrow not even play half a year, and he was injured for a quarter of the other half that he played.
Hmm.
So I get that they want to make a splash and they want to make sure that they at least stay in competition range.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking, okay, so you got Russell Wilson, who, yeah, he's serviceable if you can block well for him, but he's on the downward side of his career. And you have Justin
Absolutely.
Fields, who, yeah, he can have his moments, but he still has to
Y-
learn how to actually play the quarterback NFL style. I'm not sure he's going to learn it there either. So, and what you saw in Chicago,
And
it
you
was, uh
and again,
so,
back to Russell. You're talking about a 35-year-old quarterback.
mhm,
Russell, that's the first thing right there. If people can say it about Montana and Young for years, and remember, Steve Young played 13 years in San
yeah,
Francisco alone and
yeah,
defied age,
mhm,
then and I don't have to even mention Tom Brady and what he did
yeah, no,
in defying age. Montana defied age. Hell, he had two back injuries. Montana had two
yeah,
back surgeries and beat them both.
and mhm,
He
yeah,
beat
played
them
me
both.
after both times. Yeah,
Picked up two
yeah,
MVPs. Picked up two Super Bowls.
mhm,
And became the first to win three Super Bowl MVPs. But Joe Montana and Steve Young and quarterbacks like that had an offensive line in front of them,
that
even in
is the
their
key.
advanced age.
Yeah, and that's the
There is
key.
no line in front of the 35-year-old Russell Wilson, who I guarantee you will be the starter, and they're going to split time with him and Justin Fields. But how are you going to split time with two quarterbacks who don't know what the hell they're doing, and you don't have an offensive line in front of them?
Yeah, because you're going to have two guys who scramble and scramble for their lives. And oh, by the way, you have a two back set where
Mm-hmm.
you got to create room and holes for
Right.
in Warren and in Harris. You must establish the run, and the only way you can do that is if you have an offensive line who's committed to do so. And then if you can establish the run, then you could settle into a pass protection that is serviceable. But mm, I mean, we saw how difficult that was
Yep.
last year
Yep.
in the Steel City. So
Yep.
to me, maybe not necessarily the Steelers themselves, because the Steelers defense is okay. Should TJ Watt, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
be the way he was, just sacking quarterbacks right and left, and Mika Fitzpatrick being his disruptive self. The defense, I think, can take care of themselves, along with Hayward being the glue at nose tackle.
Mhm.
I think defensively they'll be fine. It's the offense that I won't say I have trouble with. It's the offense that I'm focused on there, and most particularly that line. I just want to see how well they protect if it is Fields or if it is Wilson, and if they can actually open up holes for their running backs. That's my focus there with them. Uh, and then of course there's other teams. I want to see if the Lions actually can be for real, finish off the job, and actually
Mhm.
become the team in the NFC to beat,
Yep.
because all they needed to do was actually put together two good quarters, and they would have done so last year, but they simply didn't get the job done. And of course,
Right.
lost to your 49ers due to a feverish 15-minute period
Man,
between the second half of the third quarter and the first half of the fourth.
it was furious.
Yeah.
The first
And
20 minutes of the second half was furious. The
mhm,
miracle catch by Brandon Ayuk that led
that's
to
what started.
a
Mhm,
touchdown. McCaffrey ties the game, and that was based on a turnover
mhm,
by Jameer Gibbs.
right.
And Jody and I are sitting there watching this game, and we're both looking at each other, going, "Is this really happening?"
Mhm,
And I've had so many Lions fans, bless all their hearts, just texting me and chatting with me throughout my broadcast, going, "This can't be real." You know,
mm,
the Lions need
yeah.
that final piece.
Mhm,
One team in the NFC I'm going to pay attention to is Philadelphia. They made a lot of moves, but they lost a
mm,
lot of pieces. And once San Francisco punched them in the mouth in week 13, it just went downhill. And you have to wonder if they can and will fully recover from that. I'm frightened for I want to see them do well. Don't get me wrong,
mhm.
but if there's one team that I'm frightened for of what happened last year may happen to them again, it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
I say this with all the honesty in the world. To me, the most talented team from 1 to 53 in NFC East is the Eagles.
Yes.
However, I'm looking at three pieces. The two they will so sorely miss, and the piece that they need to hold them together and glue them together. The two
Hmm.
pieces missing is Fletcher Cox, of course, on defense, Jason Kelsey on offense, and both particularly hardcore positions that you need. I mean, Fletcher Cox was basically one of the centers of the defense, and
Yep.
you have probably the best center of this era
And
on offense retiring,
and
and Kelsey
Jason Kelsey.
retiring. So you need to have some stalwart figure to replace both Cox and Kelsey. And you can say, well, they could do it by committee. True, yeah, but that presence between a probably I think the defensive leader and
Hmm.
the offensive leader. Yeah, you could say that Jalen Hurts is the leader of the offense. Yes, I know he's a quarterback, but to me, the heart and soul of the offense was Jason Kelsey. You need to
Yep.
find replacements
Yep.
of the heart and soul of both, and that's a hard job to fill. And
It
then
is.
then there's Jalen Hurts himself, where to me, I think even though he had an okay year, he took a step back because let's understand something. In 2022, I think he started to learn that he actually could sort of mix things up. Like if teams expected him to just bomb, he could just run all over them, and if teams
Mhm.
expected him to run, he could have throw all over them. But for some reason, last year he just simply did not have that same mojo as the year before, and I think he leaned too much on his ability to scramble. He leaned a little bit too much there, and they got away with it because they started off hot with 10-1,
Yep.
and then you mentioned, of course, where to me the season started to go flat. That home L at home L against the 49ers, where after the first quarter, it pretty much was like, and the season actually went kaput for them from there. I
Hmm.
mean, the only win they could tout was the Christmas Day win against
Against
the
the Giants.
Giants,
And they
and it was
nearly
and it,
lost that game.
yeah, but it was a putrid performance in that. So they might as well say that they just took L's the rest of the season, and
Hmm.
a team they handily beat in September, they faced off the playoffs and couldn't get 10 points on in
Tampa
the
Bay.
Bucks.
It's
Yeah,
Tampa Bay.
and so to me the slide was complete. So
Mhm.
and that was before you lose these pieces. Then you lose these two pieces, and you hope that the maturation process of Hurts continues, and he can put aside the past year. And oh, by the way, the target that the number one target he has, for some reason they didn't click.
Mhm.
Hopefully he and AJ Brown can get back on the same page and do the magic that they had 2 years ago.
Right.
And then they can gel with other pieces. Oh, and then there's this new piece called Saquon Barkley that's on the team. So you have that, and you have returning pieces that were on the team and left and tried to find greener pastures elsewhere, and now is returning to and so you having that, and then you have doubts if Nick Siriano, the Sirianni, the head coach of the Eagles, can actually put a team together and not be
Hmm.
such a micromanager. There's a
Yep.
lot of question marks you have in South Philly, and then the worst of them is, can their biggest arch rival, the Cowboys, put it together? And unfortunately to me, I don't think they can this
No.
year,
Nope.
because I think the Cowboys actually could be better. All they have to do is just be just a tad bit better than the Eagles, and they were last year just a tad bit better than the Eagles.
Hmm. I don't trust this Cowboys team. I can't
Mm,
trust. I can't trust this Cowboys team after the beatdown they got against Green Bay in the playoffs. You know that's going to play in their mind, but unfortunately, I think it's
mhm,
going to have a negative effect on the Eagles, whereas the beatdown by Tampa Bay on the Cowboys, I beg your pardon,
mhm,
whereas the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beatdown against the Eagles is going to have the reverse effect. Stay with the
mhm,
Eagles for a moment. I said a sentence aloud that a lot of Eagles fans didn't want to admit, but it happened. Jalen Hurts regressed
and he
last
did.
year.
He did. I mean, look, we know of an Eagles fan, and talk about Cool McCain. He actually said Hurts regressed, and he
Yes,
did.
yes,
He
he
did
did.
regress. I mean, and Hurts did regress, and that's not a bad thing. That just happens. I mean,
Hmm.
you know, uh, it's hard to not say that when the year before he was one of the biggest reasons why that team actually went to the Super Bowl and
Right.
came within a hair's breadth of winning it.
Hmm.
And then you turn around 11 months later, you don't even get past the wild card round. Oh, and oh, by the way, you won the division the year before, and you had the division in your hand last year and couldn't seal the
And couldn't
deals.
couldn't finish it.
And just couldn't finish.
Couldn't
So,
finish it.
and you look and you're like, okay, well, yeah, you get blaming on the defense. They had a staggering pass rush in 2022. It disappeared in 2023.
Yep.
True. The offensive line actually was pretty solid in 2022. They suffered a whole lot of injuries in 2023, and they were patchworking everything on the front, on the offensive front. True. They didn't
Hmm.
have the reliable running back, but they didn't have that in 2022 either. So it was basically running by committee, including Hurts in that. And they
Hmm.
tried the same thing last year, and with diminishing returns, it happened. It appeared. And then of course you had the chemistry that seemed to not be there with Hurts and Brown,
Hmm.
and having Hurts going elsewhere.
Yep.
The regression of Hurts permeated through the rest of the team, and you notice that. Uh, I mean,
Absolutely.
just I mean, I could think of two games in particular, and I don't even have to go with the 49ers game or the home Giants game or the wild card loss or the road L they took in Dallas. To me, I look at the L they took in the Meadowlands against the Jets,
Hmm.
where they played poorly, but they had the lead all the way to the 2 minute warning, and Hurst throws an INT on his side of the field. Now, you think that with the maturation process of this guy now, that he wouldn't make a mistake like that, but he made that mistake pressing,
Hmm.
and that that INT led to the touchdown that the Jets needed, and they went away with the W and hung the first L on the season, and that L lasted all the way to December for the
Hmm.
Eagles. So I look at that game, and I look at the home game they played against the Bills, where they did win it, and Hurts scored five touchdowns in total, but he looked porous for the first 3 quarters. I mean, he
He
looked
did,
like he
man.
was out of it for the first 3 quarters, and he feverishly put the team on his back and said, "All right, I'll carry you," and he did carry him,
Hmm.
but I
He
think
did.
he carried him at a cost.
And the cost became the remainder of the season.
Hmm.
The cost became the remainder of the season because after that Bills game, there was a blueprint that was laid out on
Mhm.
how to contain the Eagles offense
Yeah.
and how to beat the Eagles at their own game. And
Yeah.
San Francisco came in a week later and laid that blueprint to perfection. Because
Yeah.
the first two drives, the Eagles had the ball, controlled the first quarter. They
All
only
could
got
manage
6
field goals.
points.
They could only manage field goals. Yeah. And that was the death knell. All they could do was manage field goals. They couldn't capitalize in the red zone when they had opportunity. And
Mhm.
that was a huge, huge negative, and that was a huge positive the year before with the Eagles, where
Yep.
you gave them the opportunity, they will convert that into six,
Mhm.
but they only could do three. And well, against a team that all you need to do is just give them a small opportunity in the 49ers, they just blew the doors wide open. And then you saw other teams follow suit.
Yep.
They attacked the Eagles secondary because they knew that the pass rush wasn't as lethal as the year before.
Mhm.
And these teams that they couldn't lay fingers on the Eagles, they were exploding against them.
Yep.
I mean, you had a team, you had the 49ers score 42 points against them. You had the Cowboys score 33 points against them. Then you had the
The
Buccaneers scoring
Buccaneers.
32 points on them in the wild card round.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean and then you had Giants before that. The week before, they scored 27 points on them. So you just you saw this team say, okay, well, the pass rush isn't there. The secondary is going to get gobbled up.
Yep.
Oh, I know. By the way, we know that you're going to have to throw to catch up, even though you want to run badly, and it looks like Hurts has the propensity to throw turnovers,
Mhm.
and the giveaways is going to come aplenty. That was the blueprint actually from that Bills game all the way to the rest of the season for the Eagles.
Mhm. From that 49ers game, and I know we're talking a lot about the Eagles, but there's so much to explore with them because they're the preseason favorite right now to win the NFC East. They have the most talent in that division.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of putting it all together for 17 games. However, I go back to that 49ers game, and it's huge to look at. I go back to that game, and again, you circle one point where the Eagles had the Eagles ran the 49ers red zone twice, came away with
Mhm.
only 6 points.
Mhm.
The second note is when the Niners grab the lead 7-6, you can just start to see the air come out of the balloon in Philadelphia. And then Christian McCaffrey, to complete a second quarter drive, walked in. There was no challenge on that goal to go play. It wasn't even a counter trap that the Niners love to run out of shotgun. McCaffrey just walked in off the left side. And as soon as it was 14-6, you go to halftime
Yeah.
and you think, okay, they got time to recover. San Francisco gets the ball to start the second half, march it right down the field and sock him
Mhm.
in the mouth with
Touchdown.
Debo Samuel.
Mhm.
Game over.
Mhm.
Game over.
And 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 you knew the 49ers came into that game with a point to prove. They felt as
Mhm.
though, and you heard it. In fact, you heard it from Debo Samuel's mouth.
Yep.
He actually felt, and probably still feels this way, that well, the 49ers are the better team. And he felt that January of last year when they went to Philly and they took it on the chin in the NFC
Yes.
Championship game.
Mhm.
And then you felt that same energy 11 months later, when he literally danced all over them
Yeah.
because he had
I
literally
mean,
danced
Debo scored 3
all.
touchdowns that game, including 2 long ones.
Mhm.
One from 48 and the other from 47. And the one from
Mhm.
47 slammed the door. How did Keith Jackson put it? The door slammed. The
Or
door
slammed.
slammed.
Or slammed. It slammed shut. And the glorious part about how that happened was, I think the we were seeing a tale of two teams right there in that game, probably starting maybe not necessarily the second quarter, I would say the third, where
Mhm.
you saw a team that, not to say the 49ers didn't believe that they were great, I think they believed they were great.
Yep.
I think they wanted to show that they were great, and I think they didn't feel as though they had shown it, for maybe the exception of, say, probably the home game that they blew the doors off with the Cowboys in October.
Yeah.
Um, so they, of course, they were wounded because they lost that three straight, and I heard many excuses of 49ers fan. They're like, well, they
Mm.
didn't have Williams and they didn't have Debo. Doesn't matter.
You
Didn't
know
matter.
what? You know what? They were trying to pin me to say the same excuses, and I called it like I see it. We got our ass kicked.
Yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
let's just be real. We threw away a game against Cleveland that we should have run them over. We threw away a game against the Vikings. You don't turn the
mhm,
ball over 3 times
can't.
at US
Yeah,
Bank Stadium and expect to
can't do it.
win.
You can't do
And
it.
then you get Cincinnati at home, and Cincinnati supposedly was a wounded team, and they kicked our ass.
Yeah, and they dominated that game from start to
They
finish.
did. They
So,
dominated that game. They outgained us 2-1.
mhm,
I'm not
so
gonna sit here
yeah,
and not tell it like it is with sports that I've done for some 30 years.
yeah. So you had a team. They believed that they were great, but they took it on the chin,
They did. They
and they
did.
needed to have, yeah, and they needed to have that ego boost, and they needed to have that anchor to where they say, okay, I think this is where we could say that we are going to be the team to beat the NFC, and they needed that performance. And
Mhm.
to me, that the second quarter was good, but I think the third quarter was better. They needed to have that dominance on both sides of the ball where they could say, well, okay, we went to somebody's stadium. They were considered the number one team in the NFC, and we basically beat them into submission. They
Mhm.
needed to have that performance, and that's what propelled them to the Super Bowl, and that unfortunately is what drove the Eagles to have that downward spiral. And I mean, it was funny to see this one game have the two different teams go into two different directions because of that matchup. And and when people give me the, and I mean, I was hearing the excuses. Well, the 49ers would be undefeated if Trent Williams wasn't playing. Trent Williams was playing. He was hurt. Well, he actually was on the field against the Browns,
He
and they took an
was.
L in that game.
Mhm.
So, and he got pancaked in that game. So you can give me all the excuses you want. He was there. He took an L. Your team took an L. And you can say, well, Debo Samuel
And
was he
they
was hurt too.
and the
Yeah,
and the
but
real
to me, I'm
49er
sorry.
fans saw and the real 49er fans saw what happened, and they
Mhm.
needed they needed that bounce back game.
And
The
and
Jaguars was the Jaguars game was a warm up when they
it
came off
was.
the bye week, and the bye week
It was.
gave them a chance to rest. Speaking
Mhm,
of chances, a
mhm,
team that has had a couple of chances to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, and they blew them both at home, the Baltimore Ravens. Remember, 5 years ago, they hosted Tennessee in the division round, got
um,
cooked.
it wasn't even it was a contest. Wasn't even a
They got
contest.
cooked. They got cooked on a Saturday night.
Mhm,
This past season, they hosted Kansas City in their house for the AFC Championship.
mhm.
They started with a 3-and-out, and Kansas City pounced.
Yeah, they drove it down the field, scored a touchdown, and that was it, really.
That was ball
That was
game.
the game. Yeah, that
That
was the
was ball
game.
game.
And you could say, well, I mean, the Ravens scored 7, so it wouldn't have been a ball game. No, 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 no. That's not what I'm talking about. The Chiefs established who was going to be the kings of that game on that very first drive. They
On
actually
the first time they had the ball.
yeah, they determined they were going to beat the Ravens literally at their own game. They were going to be physical. They were going to bring it. They were going to pound them and pound them and pound them, and they were going to basically play keep away from Lamar Jackson all game long. And there was nothing the Ravens were going to do about it because there wasn't anything the Ravens did do about it. And to me, and I know what you're setting me up for. So you have the Ravens. They have, to me, their best regular season in the history of their franchise.
Mhm.
And they have the two home games that they so desperately want, along with the bye. And then, of course, they clobbered Texas with a wonderful second half. Although
Yep.
they could have played much better in the first half, but they went into halftime. It was 10-10. And
Mhm.
I keep it real. I said, look, I think the Texans, if the Ravens were to play the way that I've seen them play in the playoffs, they have a chance. But nope, the
Mhm.
Ravens are too talented. They're just too talented. They're too physical
Yep.
for the Texas team right at that
And
then.
that's exactly what you said on
Yeah.
that's exactly what you said on my show when we did our
Mhm.
preview
Yeah.
of the divisional round.
Yeah.
You said, look, this Ravens team is too talented for
Yeah.
Houston.
They're too talented.
Houston's just
Yeah.
starting out.
hmm And this
They're
is
just
one.
starting out on that
Yeah.
voyage with a franchise
Mhm.
quarterback.
Yeah. And so this is going to be one of those games, and you've been down that road, and I've been down the road. This is going to be one of those games you can look at that, and they're going to, and you will say, okay, so this was the time where this team learned a valuable lesson as to there is a difference between showing up in the playoffs and actually winning it and believing that you can win against any team in the playoffs,
Yep.
no matter where you play them.
Yep.
Now they already established they can win the playoffs because the week before they did. They
Mhm.
skunked the Browns.
They,
So,
they did. They skunked them bad.
see, yeah. In fact, that was the best performance in franchise history in the playoffs for the Texans. They never looked that good in the playoffs.
Mm-mm.
So, so they had the experience. Okay, so this group now has a playoff win in their belt. So for me, I was like, okay, well, season is a success. Anything else is
Yes.
gravy. And to
Anything
yeah,
extra is gravy.
and I
You've
and
seen it
I've
with
yeah.
you've seen it with your team when they start to
Mhm.
grow. I've seen it with my team when they got a couple of franchise quarterbacks. That's all. That's the only
Yeah,
part. That's the biggest part that
yeah.
you need.
Mhm. And
And Baltimore has their franchise
yeah,
quarterback in Lamar Jackson. My
right.
problem with Lamar is the postseason.
And and here and oh man, you laid it out beautifully for me. So yeah, the gravy for me. So they're in Baltimore. They go into halftime tied at 10. I'm like, okay, well then I'm happy.
Mhm.
They competed. I don't think they're going to win it, but they
But they
competed.
competed.
They competed. I can be happy with it. And of course, the Ravens had a 24-point second half. They won 34-10. And you get so many Ravens fans say,
Oh
this
dear.
is this is Ravens football, and this is Lamar Jackson. He's probably going to become the MVP, and he was.
Yep.
And he had this wonderful playoff performance. You said that he would never have. Look at this. Okay, yeah, fine. He had a
Mhm.
good performance the second half. I'm not gonna take that away from you. I'm not gonna take it away
Right.
from anybody. Definitely not gonna take it away from him.
No.
But but to me, I thought was okay. The Texans, their defense was decent, and the team, they're talented, but they're young. Okay,
Right.
can they do the same thing against a team that is weathered, that is tested, that is proven, that is the defending Super Bowl champs? And oh, by the way, you can't even say they can't win a road game. They just came off of winning a road game against the
Absolutely.
team.
In Buffalo
Yeah, but say against uh,
against the
uh,
Buffalo Bills.
I'm about to say, and I'm like all the okay, this is a possible time to actually have the Chiefs have a comeuppance. They went to Buffalo against a team that has tasted defeat against the Chiefs in the playoffs at least twice recently.
Mhm.
Uh, and once in the AFC Championship game, once in, of course, probably one of the best games we've ever seen in the playoffs, which actually brought forth the new rules of the playoffs in the
Yeah.
overtime.
Mhm.
And the Bills, and I heard Bills fans say, all we need is to have the Chiefs come to our crib, and that's all we need. If they come to our crib, it is game over. Well,
Mm-mm.
you had the Chiefs come to Orchard Park. You had your opportunity to beat them, and you actually had the lead in the second quarter, and you let the Chiefs hang around, and then you got a chance to see what a championship team is all about because they saw, okay, well, we can't bomb away on this team. Okay, we'll just maul them, and they got mauled. So
They
the
did.
Ravens, yeah, so the Ravens have to say, wow, so a team that was motivated to beat them in their crib, they took an L. All right, so this is not going to be an easy feat. This is not going to be an easy game. And dare say, I think the whole team took them a little bit too lightly. And to
Just a
me,
bit.
I say that because they, just like you said, first possession for the Ravens, 3-1-2-3 punt, like the Rockettes in New York. And then the Chiefs first drive, they just go down, and I mean systematically go down and just destroy them like they're like they're
Carve them up.
tanks.
They
They just carved
carved
him
them.
up.
They carved them to pieces.
And it was a beautiful touchdown pass that
Mhm.
Mahomes threw to Kelsey. And to me, I literally, and you probably did too, I literally felt the energy just go all out of M&T Bank Stadium. That
Mhm.
field was the Chiefs. From that touchdown, the field was the Chiefs. And I had this conversation with one of my homeboys when we talked about this simply because John Harbaugh had the nerve to opine recently.
Oh boy.
Quote, in my heart of hearts, I believe that Lamar Jackson, when it's all said and done, when we're sitting back and we're watching everything, he will be the greatest quarterback of all time. Close quote. I wish I was April fooling you. I wish I would
Ah,
say that was a lie. No, he actually said
no.
that.
No, he did. He did say that.
The problem I
I
have with
sh
that,
Oh
go ahead.
boy.
The problem
I
I have with
showed
that,
that to Jody.
mhm,
I showed that very quote to Jody.
mhm.
She turned and looked at me and said, "Are you kidding?"
And I had this talk with a homeboy of mine. I said, "Look, we could do it with qualifiers. Okay, best
Mhm.
scrambler, best dual threat, best the most prolific QB who's a rusher, the most athletic. You know,
Right.
if you put qualifiers on, then maybe we could talk. But considering that he's now in his sixth year
Mhm.
and he's only produced one AFC Championship trip, no, I can't even say that. And you have someone that's around the same age as him. He already has gotten to the mountaintop 4 times and has won it 3 times. I can't say that. I can't say that with him. And then here is to me the kicker. His first ever playoff game was at home against the Chargers about 4 or 5 years ago, where the Chargers defensively said, "All right, we know that you can run. You can run all 11 of us on defense racket. You can have our
Mhm.
tongues wag, and you could probably outrun all 11 of us on this field.
Right.
But you're not going to beat us with your legs. You're going to beat us with your head and your arm, and
Mhm.
we don't think you can do it."
We
And
got
so
You gotta beat us with the weapon you don't use much.
yeah, so they basically said, we'll give you some of the running lane, but we're not going to give you all of it, and we're going to
Mhm.
just simply reduce you to be a pocket passer." And he looked like he was lost.
He
Fast
was
forward
lost.
to January, I mean this January, and I'll be doggone
Mhm.
if the Chiefs didn't come with the same game plan, and I'll
Yep.
be doggone if Lamar Jackson didn't look the same lost. That
He
to
w
me is what I do not like about the maturation process or lack thereof of number 8 for the Ravens. That is
Mhm.
scary to me. And I'm not saying it because I hate the guy. I love Lamar Jackson. I think he's one of the most entertaining guys you can see on TV right now. But
But he has not matured.
you got to see some progression in the pocket where and I know you've heard this. You've heard people say, "Well, he'll come." For example, last year they played the Lions. He carved them up in the pocket. I think it
Mhm.
was like 21 to 27 over 300 yards
Yep.
and 4 touchdowns. And you have them come back to you say, "See, look at that. You say he can't do it in the pocket. He does it in the pocket." Yes, yes, yes. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the ability to do it. I'm saying that in the clutch key moments, can he do it instinctually? The answer is no. And unfortunately, he proved that answer to be no in the most recent big game that the Ravens have played.
Mhm.
And
And that
I will say
entire
this.
week, the Ravens fans were yapping. That
Mhm,
entire week, the Ravens fans were yapping. We did our preview of the championship games, and I said very clearly, to be the champs, you have to
mhm,
beat the champs.
yeah.
Let me say it
And
again, Baltimore. To be the champs, you have to beat the champs.
to me, they had a new type of swag with them. So
Mhm.
it wasn't even to me a case of, well, we've done this a few times before. We did this last year. This is old hat to us. we're gonna roll our helmets and you're gonna beat and we're gonna beat you. It wasn't that. It was a well, people said we couldn't do it, and we did it. You know, people said that we couldn't beat a team like the Dolphins that would run us out of the gym. Well, they ran them out the gym, so to speak,
Yep.
and rendered them to be absolutely basically with no
Nothing.
fangs. They did. I mean, the Dolphins had nothing to present to them, both offensively or defensively.
Hmm.
And then they're coming off of the game against Buffalo, where against the Bills, you had the Chiefs take what the Bills do and do it better than they did,
Hmm.
and they did it with having Isaiah Pacheco just basically be a battering ram when he needed to be.
Just run all
Yeah,
over him.
yeah.
The same way.
A timely
This.
pass from Mahomes,
Hmm.
a timely catch by Kelsey, but that game basically was an Isaiah Pacheco battering ram, and then the Bills couldn't stop it, and then
They
they
couldn't
repeated
stop
the
it.
same thing against the Ravens the following week.
Yep. They couldn't stop. They couldn't stop it. One more
Mm.
thing before we get out of here, man. I got to know from you because you and I have talked about this off the air. Now we're going to talk about it on the air. Why is the hatred for one Brock Purdy even more through the roof now than it was when he was setting the team record for passing yards in a season and being in the MVP conversation? Why is the hatred even more through the roof now?
Dare say that he actually looks like he's a Joe Montana esque. Not saying that he is Joe Montana, but a
Mm-hmm.
Joe Montana esque style of quarterback where he relies on his guile, he relies on his arm, he relies on his chutzpah, he relies on his brain. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he has the ability to scramble when necessary, but his calling card is not that.
Right.
And and he doesn't wow a lot of people, and people think, well, the 49ers are winning in spite of him. And not saying they're winning because of him. And the reason why that's the case, so you now have a team where he is suited with a lot of weapons. I
Yep.
mean, in the passing game, you have
Oh boy.
Ayuk and Samuel and Kittle. Uh, in the running game, you have Debo and you have McCaffrey, and that's just the two biggest ones. There's no telling what other running backs that Kyle Shanahan plucked from free agency that's on the squad that would
Exactly.
play with him
Or the draft.
or the
Elijah
draft.
Mitchell, anyone?
Right. Yeah, and then of course you have the offensive line in front of him, which the other four don't get enough credit, but most certainly you have to tip cap to Trent Williams. So
Yep.
you have in front of him a quality offense that's built for him to succeed, and then you'll have people who say, well, you can insert any guy in Purdy's spot and he would
Oh,
succeed.
jeez. Yep.
Not necessarily
Heard
true.
that.
And yeah, you could say that Garoppolo brought him to the Super Bowl. Yes, he did.
He did.
He brought him to the NFC Championship game another time. Yes, he did. But the thing that makes him a little better than Garoppolo is that Purdy actually takes care of the ball better.
Yes.
And to me, a Kyle Shanahan run offense is necessary to have a QB who takes care of the ball. The reason why I know this is because he was an offensive coordinator in the Texans during the Matt Schaub era, and I
Hmm.
got a chance to see when Schaub takes care of the ball, that offense runs smooth. When he
Yes.
doesn't take care of the ball, the offense is absolutely clumsy.
Hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, sir. You've seen it.
I have.
When the offense is on
I
the
have.
Garoppolo, that offense did not run as smooth.
Nope.
But now
And
you have Purdy,
a lot of turnovers happen.
and a lot
A
of turnovers
lot
happen.
of turnovers happen. With Purdy, he doesn't turn the ball over. Purdy,
No,
oh my God. I to say that Purdy is smart will be an understatement.
yeah, and it shows what you need to have in a quarterback. Uh, and and I will actually say the nasty word that I think many don't want to say. He's a throwback. Brock
Hmm.
Purdy is a throwback. He is the quintessential definition of what these coaches, offense coordinators, most likely would like to have in a quarterback, where it's like, okay, so here is the offense. I want you to operate it the best way you see fit. And if it means you have to scramble, fine, but it's not going to be where we're going to actually call plays where you have to run,
Right.
like a Lamar Jackson, like an Anthony Richardson, like even a
Hmm.
CJ Stroud. Although to me, with Richardson and with Stroud, that would be less much of a case. Although
Yep.
both are athletic enough to where they can pull off having their numbers being called to run. But
Yes.
you're having the mentality down with a lot of NFL fans, especially young ones, especially black ones, where you won't get the respect necessary as a quarterback unless you can run a 4.40 and
Hmm.
throw it 60 yards at the same time.
Yep.
So that's what you have in Lamar Jackson, and you're going to have a lot of people love him because he can run a 4.40 and he can wing the ball deep.
Hmm.
Thing is, you need to have the quarterback put your team in the best positions possible to win, and it will be best served if you don't have him run it more than 10 times a game. That is
Exactly.
why that is why the Chiefs are the most successful team right now, because you have that best of both worlds in Mahomes, where he can scramble whenever things break down, but he doesn't rely on his running ability all the time. He relies on his throwing ability, and then, oh, by the way, now he doesn't rely on his throwing ability all the time, because he and Andy Reid was saying that, okay, you're acting like Brett Favre. You're just chunking the ball when you get in trouble. You're starting to turn the ball over a little bit too much. Let's dial it back a bit.
Yep.
And now Mahomes looks even better because now he's trusting his running game more too. So you have in Purdy a guy who he's like, okay, I am the facilitator, but the other 10, the five in front of me, of course, your job is to make me look good and that make this jersey stay clean and stay scarlet red and not have a green mark on it.
Hmm.
And the other five, well, it's my job to give the ball to you and you to do your thing. And if these big uglies in front give me the time, I'm gonna give you the ball.
Boy,
And
do
it's
we
not
see
and it's
that.
not yeah, and it's not a case of, well, I believe I'm the best athlete on the team. And
Oh.
if you skill position players think that you're better than me, well, check these numbers and check out when I get the ball next.
Hmm.
Where you basically have I hate to say it like this, but it's true. You have a glorified running back on the center. That is not Brock Purdy.
No.
And because he has that wonderful talent in front of him and he has a really good defense too, people think that, okay, well, the 49ers are winning in spite of a QB that isn't worth the time of day. Oh, but by the way, he was one of the leading MVP vote getters last year. I don't know why. I have no rationale as to why he was, but he was.
Seven great quarterbacks in Brock Purdy. Man, I'm gonna hang that in my office just as Purdy is breaking more records this year. That is Cole Johnson, the man, no myth, all legend, the EP of all EPs, coming back to the old digs and hanging out with us for a while. Man, I hope you can hang out with us for the whole season. Love you and love having you.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate chopping up football, and man, almost feels like old times.
Doesn't it? It does. Congratulations again on the morning shift. Fabulous, fabulous show. It's required watching, folks. I'm requiring that you watch it to get your day started. Morning shift leads off daily programming on WJKS and our other stations and Snowman Multimedia Sports Radio. And then I'll be behind it with Snowman in the morning. That is solid as of right now. Thank you, buddy. I love you. Thank you. We'll do it again soon.
Love you too, man. Thank you so much, bro.
Hey, don't go anywhere. Hour two is next.